Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of Confessions of a Celebrity Bodyguard. I'm Chuck Oliveris. Man, has it been hot? Is it everywhere? Because I'm looking at the numbers, triple digits across the U.S., going, holy crap. And I'm just tripping out. This is some hot weather. I hope everybody had a great 4th of July weekend. I personally was out on a boat with the family on the lake, and then over at a friend's house who had a big blow up slide in his backyard. Kyle and Caitlin, thanks for the invite. We had a blast also swimming in their pool. Hope everybody stayed cool. It was kind of hard to do unless you were near some water, right? So let's hope the grids don't go down and we get through this really, really crazy weather right now. Hey, I wanted to say I'm really excited about the numbers from the podcast so far. I was tripping out because I was reading. I have a Facebook page, Confessions of a Hollywood or Confessions of a Celebrity Bodyguard, and that page is just picking up more and more activity. They give you the stats on it: 268 post engagements. That went up by 100 yesterday. 243 new subscribers. That's pretty cool. I appreciate that very much. I know a lot of people have subscribed to the YouTube channel. I'm super grateful for that. Did not expect so many people to enjoy it. So I think we're in the right track here. But what's interesting to me is the stats break down like this: 67.5 of the watchers are men. I'm sorry, are women, and 32.5% are men. Where's my guys? What's up, bros? Come on. You can't let the girls beat you. 67.5. It's flattering and everything, but come on. I need a little boost there. You guys help me out. Going to jump right back into finishing up talking about Warner Brothers Studios and my experiences there. One of the biggest movie lots in Hollywood, of course, one of the coolest places I've ever worked. And I wanted to tell you about some more stuff with that studio. It's kind of like giving you a little inside on it if you've never been there or taken the tour. Once again, I do recommend the Warner Brothers tour. In my opinion, it's one of the best tours in Hollywood. It seems like everybody goes to Universal Studios. That's cool, but Jaws is still there, the same stuff that's been there for a while. At Warner Brothers, you're going to see more active stuff that you're watching on TV and in movies now. And it's just a little bit cooler, in my opinion. So talking about the studio, I wanted to mention these things. There's things called Star Wagons. Most of you are familiar with Star Wagons. Star Wagons are the dressing rooms, and they're always out on location or all around the studio lot everywhere. And they're basically used for dressing rooms or whatever you call it, dressing rooms. They were dressing rooms for the stars. If you're watching YouTube, there's a shot of one right there. So these Star Wagons have a handle on the outside. That handle outside the door can be flipped up and bent over, and it will lock that door from the outside of the trailer. So this is a funny story. When I was a watch commander there, the security officers on the graveyard shifts and stuff would dip into those things to take a little nap. And they thought that was a pretty unique idea and that they're the first ones who thought of it. But we knew about it already because we all started at Set Watch and everybody knew. So it was kind of funny. What we used to do, we used to watch an officer go in there and dip in there to go to sleep or whatever. And then we would quietly go over and pull that handle and lock that door from the outside. Then we would go on about our business for the night. And about 2 hours later on the radio, some officer would call and go, hey, I'm stuck in one of the Star Wagons out on New York Street. Well, why were you in the Star Wagon? Oh, I just came to check it. No, you went in to go to sleep. It was hilarious, and they'd be so embarrassed. He'd go and lock that door. The guy's all puffy faced, been laying on the little couch in there sleeping for the last 2 hours when he's supposed to be doing his job. So it's just kind of a funny story because I think all the watch commanders knew that trick, and we all knew to go up and lock that door from the outside. And then they had no choice when they woke up and realized they were locked in to call us to get them out. It's one of my favorite things to do back in the day. So I thought I'd share that with you. Also, last week I was talking a lot about Keanu Reeves and all the different stuff I did with him for the Matrix movies. I wanted to share one more thing with you just to show you what kind of guy he was. So in episode 1, I was talking about when I worked at Tower Records and my office was up there on Sunset Strip. So it wasn't unusual. There's an alley behind that store where I parked, and it kind of cuts through to the next block, right across from the Viper Room. It wasn't unusual to see Keanu out there sitting down with a homeless gentleman and sharing a sip of booze from a bottle. And I found out what he would do is he would go right up the street, which is just a few paces away, to Turner's Liquors. And if you're watching YouTube, there's a shot of Turner's for you. So Turner's Liquor is right there on Sunset Strip. They deliver to the celebrities at home any booze and stuff like that they want. But Keanu would go grab a bottle there, and then he would go sit back with that homeless gentleman, and he would sit there for probably 2 or 3 hours. And it would be not unusual to see him every couple of days out there. I know people used to come into the office and be like, "Hey, Keanu's back in the alley." I just thought that was a really sweet thing because he actually gave a shit about these guys and wanted to talk to them and enjoy a conversation with them. So kind of interesting. Thought I'd share that with you. And of course, right outside the Viper Room, the lower entrance door is where River Phoenix OD'd and unfortunately passed away out there. And it was really weird because one day I walked across the street kind of checking that out when my office was there. And there's a little plaque in the sidewalk that's a memory thing to River. So I always thought that was kind of neat. Take a sip of my little juice. So talking more about some of the hot TV shows that we filmed on the studio lot there at Warner Brothers, 2.5 Men was completely blowing up at that time. Of course, that's the original cast, John Cryer and Charlie Sheen. During that 10-year with that show, the deal with that was Charlie obviously was doing a lot of drugs and stuff, and it got a little bit crazy. And it got to a point where I think it was stage 26 is where they shot 2.5 Men, but it got to a point where everybody kind of steered away from stage 26 because you never knew what was going to happen out there. Of course, he had a couple arguments with one of the producers. I don't know if he was eventually fired. I can't remember if he left, but he was a hot mess during that time, and it was all over social media. He was posting stuff he probably should have never posted and probably wishes he never had. And that all kind of went sour. And of course, Ashton Kutcher was brought in to take over that role. And so it changed a little bit after that. But that was one thing we all just kind of said, hey, stay away from stage 26, Charlie Sheen's show. Kind of crazy. When I became a watch commander there, they give you a ring of keys. It's a movie studio, right? So imagine, if you will, this huge key ring with 1,000 keys on it or something. I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, what in the hell? I am never going to remember what any of these keys fit. But of course, you do over time because it's muscle memory after you do the job so long. But along with those keys were a couple key card access things. And out by the little town square that I was telling you about, where they used to shoot Gilmore Girls and a lot of other things, there were 2 buildings back there that were temperature controlled, and they contain all the original films and television show episodes and things that they never want ruined. So our job was to go in nightly and check the temperature in those rooms and make sure that it's at a certain level. And I don't remember what it was, but I do remember that it was our job to check it, and it was a big deal if it wasn't right. So the thing I want to tell you about that is when you walk into this room, it's so cool. If you're watching YouTube, here's a shot of the vault. So that's all film in cans, the round tin cans, right? And every one of them is marked. And again, that whole room is very cool inside. And that is, of course, to keep the film from being brittle and cracking and anything like that. But what was fun was going through that place and reading some of the titles on the cans. If you're watching YouTube, you can see that right there, Superman 1 and etc. But I'm talking original pilots to things like Gilligan's Island, original movies. I mean, they have it all in there. So it's a super, super important area of the lot, and God forbid a fire or anything ever take it out. But I'm pretty sure they have extra measures for that kind of thing there. But it was a really cool vault, and it was fun to go through there and check it every night. Every night when I'd start reading those cans, I'd see something else I hadn't seen before, and then like, oh wow, I remember that movie. Oh, I remember that show. So one of the cooler places to visit there on the studio lot. Also want to talk about the gift shop there. They had a gift shop that had lots of cool stuff there. And I'm going to get back to that in a little bit toward the end of the podcast. So I just wanted to show you that real quick. They sell things, merchandise, Warner Brothers, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. Here's all about the Andersons. If you're watching YouTube channel, that's a shot of the cast of the show. I don't know if you remember that show with Anthony Anderson, but what I can tell you is that was a great show. It was shot right inside of Gate 3, I believe. And I used to be by there every day and I would see Anthony. I actually spoke to Anthony quite a bit when he came to Jimmy Kimmel. I think he actually even remembered me from there. But he was a really, really cool guy. And of course, John Amos, right there. And you may remember him from an old show, Good Times. He was his father on that show. And what was really, really cool about that was I get to see these people every day. Anthony Anderson was a really cool guy, always so nice to everybody. His mother, his real life mother, loves to make pie. And he used to bring pie to Jimmy Kimmel all the time. And I'd always ask him, did Mama make that? And he'd say, yeah, Mama made another pie for Jimmy or whatever. But the sweetest guy in the world, super down to earth. But I want to go back to John Amos, the guy from Good Times that played his father on that show. So one day we had a medical emergency on the lot, and unfortunately, it was Mr. Amos, and he had had a heart attack on the stage. And they responded to it. We rolled fire in there and everything, but it was really, really scary because he was a super nice man. I'd see him at the end of the day after he was done shooting. He'd be going out to his car and he'd be like, "Hey, Chuck, how you doing? Hey, John, how are you?" Blah blah blah. But it was kind of sad when he had that heart attack. Thank God he was okay. He did come back to the show and work. And just one of those little things I remember because he was so kind to me all the time. And then, of course, the fact that he was in Good Times. One of the other shows that was very popular while I was working at the studio there was a show called Without a Trace. Now, this show starred Anthony LaPaglia. That's him there in the middle if you're watching YouTube, and the rest of the cast. Great show. You may remember Anthony LaPaglia because he was in a film called Empire Records. And I was just talking about this movie with my good friends Amberly and Trevor Ballou because they love this movie. And if you're watching YouTube, here's a shot of Joe in that movie. He played the record store manager. But Anthony LaPaglia would be out there all the time as well. And he was right next to where the Anderson shot. So I'd see him quite a bit. He's a very cool guy, kind of short. And I think the thing that always surprised me about him was that he spoke with an Australian accent. He was Australian, and I never realized that because on the show, you would never have known that. And of course, he played Joe in Empire Records, and he never spoke with the accent. So I always thought that was kind of interesting. They would shoot that show quite a bit out there, and so we saw them quite often. Here's the Olsen twins. This is, if you're watching YouTube, there's the sisters there. We all remember them from Full House. So the Olsens had an office at the back inside Gate 7, are a bunch of little bungalows and stuff, and they had a production company or something back there because, as you know, they're worth a lot of money. I'd see the girls going in and out all the time. I never really dealt with them a lot other than seeing them driving in and driving out, but they did have a nice little office back there, and everybody seemed to enjoy them. Sean Cassidy, who you may remember as a 70s teen idol, he also had a production office back there, and I'm going to talk about him in a little bit. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about the George Lopez show. So we had George Lopez. As you know, I told that little story about Clint Eastwood smashing out the windows of one of George's writers who kept parking in his parking space. Well, there he's there. And it's interesting because at that time, that was George's first big show being shot there at Warner Brothers. And he was very nice to my security people and to me. They had a lot of food in there. We're going to talk about craft service, but he had a lot of food in his stage, a lot of goodies and candies and things like that. And he used to tell us, hey, when you guys are here at night and you go through and you check my stage, help yourself to whatever you want. You eat anything you want. And so I always thought that was kind of nice. I know a lot of people are not digging on him right now. I think he canceled a show recently at one of the casinos, and there was some bad juju about it. But for me, always nice to us, and again, offering us to be able to eat that food stuff. So another story here, and this is interesting. We had a fire on one of the big stages one day. And so we rolled Burbank Fire Department into the studio. I was fairly new at being a watch commander on this day, but it was a fire, right? So I thought, oh, I need to respond to this too. You know, I'm the watch commander on shift. So I jump in my little security vehicle and I book it ass down the main drag to this stage. And I don't remember which one it was that had a small fire on it. But I rolled up before our local fire department inside the studio, before the Warner Brothers Fire Department showed up, and before Burbank. I rolled up first. And the big stage door was open. And I jump out of my van like I'm fucking Batman or something, and I run into that stage. And I'm looking, okay, let's see what's going on. Well, I didn't see anything. I didn't see smoke or to know what to look for, really. And so as I'm coming back out the big stage door, the fire department's rolling up, and like 4 of them jump out and they look at me and shake their head. And I said, "What?" And they go, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen anybody do." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, you're responding to a fire. We're the fire department, and you're running into the building like an idiot. And I kind of was like, "Oh, geez," like that sad dog in the cartoons. I felt stupid. Yeah, I never did that again. Yeah, a little too big for my britches, right? That was kind of funny. I knew a lot of the fire guys too, and they used to tease me about that all the time. But hey, I did what I did. Hey, so I was talking about Sean Cassidy. If you don't remember, 70s teen idol, he was on a show called Hardy Boys with another guy named Parker Stevenson. That's going way back. So Sean Cassidy is the baby brother of David Cassidy. And David Cassidy, another 70s heartthrob, was originally from the Partridge Family. And then, of course, the mother on that show was Shirley Jones, who was actually Sean Cassidy's mother and David Cassidy's stepmother, as she was married to Jack Cassidy, who was a pretty big movie star at the time. If you're watching YouTube, there's a shot of Jack, Shirley, and David. But I want to talk about Sean because this is kind of a sad thing that happened. So I was working one day, and I think it was gate 8. It was really hot out there, and all the cars were lined up trying to get in the gate. Well, Sean Cassidy, as I told you, has a production office next to the Olsen twins, and he comes rolling up. He's kind of got a newer car. If you're watching YouTube, here's a shot of him today. This is what Sean looks like today. Really nice man. But what happened was he hit his brakes or something on this car, and it was, like I said, it was like a newer sports car or something. And my officer was in between him and the other vehicle in front of him, checking the license plate or something. And Sean's car accelerated into my officer's legs. So that officer went to the ground, and of course, it caused a big hoopla around there. We had to rush him over to the hospital in Burbank there. What I want to tell you about that was it did turn out to be something faulty on the car. It was not Sean's fault, but Sean could not have felt more bad about it. As the weeks went on, that officer was out of work for quite a bit of time recovering from that. Sean Cassidy visited him in the hospital. He was constantly calling and checking on him. I mean, he really did feel bad. And I felt horrible for him because I had to take all his information after it happened. And I'm like, "Sean, how did it happen? How did the car accelerate? Blah, blah, blah." I mean, it was some fancy sports car. And in the end, there was something faulty on it that made it accelerate. But interesting story. But I just thought I'd share that with you because I felt so bad for that guy. That really wasn't cool. And I know that he didn't like it either. Talk about Terry Polo. Some of you know who Terry Polo is. I got to hang around her quite a bit, actually, and she's hilarious. So this is Terry Polo. If you're watching YouTube, you may remember her as Ben Stiller's wife in Meet the Parents. She's been in quite a few things. And there was another show, The Fosters. Let's show you that on YouTube. There's The Fosters. She was a cop in that one. But Terry Polo was this actress that was doing a show that Brooke Shields was producing. And I would see her all the time because she smoked. And me being a smoker, I was always out in these areas smoking too. So I would see her all the time outside the stage of this Brooke Shields show in between filming. And we'd talk and smoke cigarettes together. And ironically, I have another story about her because later she came on to the set of CSI Miami and spent a week with us playing a character on there. We'll talk about that in another podcast because it relates to something else. But Terry Polo is like the coolest chick in the world, funny as hell, a little foul-mouthed, which I kind of dug. It made her more real to me. But I also love her, and I loved her in Meet the Parents and Meet the Flockers and all the other movies and stuff. But Definitely one lady I never minded hanging around very much. Super, super cool. I want to tell you about the prop department at Warner Brothers. So the prop department at Warner Brothers is underground. And this place, you go in and you take an elevator down. And I used to have to always check this area as well at night. It was always dark in there. And as you walked through it, poof, 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 the lights would go on, right? Which was kind of creepy and kind of freaky. But you talk about props from any era and from all over the world. This place was loaded with any kind of plates, any kind of lamps, any kind of silverware, any kind of chairs, tables, armoires, anything you want is in the basement of this Warner Brothers prop department. And walking through that thing honestly was a blast because when you got bored, I'll go down and check the prop department. But I would always marvel at the things they had down there. And it was interesting because those props are not just for Warner Brothers movies. That Warner Brothers props department rents that stuff out to Universal Studios, to MGM, to Sony Music, whoever, I mean, Sony Studios, whoever wants to rent it can rent it. They'll put a tag on it and they'll rent it to them for a certain amount of money and they'll come and get them. So they keep a very, very large group of props down there. And again, it's so fun and so crazy to look at. Just everywhere you look, like everything, chairs. I mean, it was just crazy. I just loved walking through there and seeing all the different things. And of course, they had other props down there and in the areas. This is some Harry Potter stuff. If you're watching YouTube, there, some of the characters, someone taking a picture of them there. And of course, being a huge Batman fan, the bat masks, the cowl masks, and so forth. There's actually an off-site warehouse in Burbank, undisclosed. You would not know what it was unless you went in there. But I used to have to go in there at night and check that and go off lot and look at it and stuff. And that's where all the Batmobiles were. And they had every one of them in there. And it was kind of cool. And being a huge Batman fan like I was, I would go in there and I'd just be marveling at those cars. I just wanted to get in one and just cruise a little bit, right? Somewhere around Burbank, bring it back. Yeah, I can't do that. I would have never done that. I wasn't that ballsy. And people ask me all the time, what's your favorite Batmobile? And it's like, hands down, it's the Tumbler from Christian Bale, The Dark Knight. I love that thing. I used to see it driving around the studio lot. They'd bring it on the lot and drive it around. Sometimes it was in a warehouse being worked on and other stuff there. So I always thought that was kind of cool being able to see all those. They also had all the bat suits in there. They had some Superman suits in there. And again, all I wanted to do was try and put one of those things on and go play superhero or whatever. But when you see him, you can't help it. I mean, come on, the child in you comes out, right? So all that kind of fun stuff is not stuff you see every day. It's the secrets of the movies and the props and things like that. And it's one of the things that makes it so fun working at a movie studio, aside from dealing with all the movie stars and television stars and so forth. Of course, my first love of Batman was the series with Adam West. And that particular Batmobile, I always loved. And I always had a passion for. I would see it and I just thought that was the coolest car in the world. And there's a guy by the name of George Barris that built this car. He built the Monkees car for the Monkees TV series, the Munsters car. George Barris was known in Hollywood for being able to make a car for anybody that was trying to do something cool. But that original Batmobile, if you're watching YouTube, there's George there with his car, was pretty cool. So I lived on Lancashire in what they call NoHo, which is North Hollywood. And right on the corner is Barris Customs. That's George's place there. Well, that original Batmobile used to be inside the window all the time. And I would drive by this every single day and look at that Batmobile through the window. And it was always in there for people to stop and look in and see. It was not open to the public. It was not something that anyone could just go in there and do. But I did actually call him when I was working for CBS on CSI Miami. I called them one time and I said, hey, do you let people in to see the Batmobile? I'd love to come in and see it. I said, I worked on CBS with CSI Miami. And they said, absolutely. If you're in the industry, you can definitely come through and check out the car. And then I never did it. And I shot myself every time. And I just thought, oh my God, what the hell's wrong with you? I never did it. Something, I got preoccupied or something, never went down and knocked on the door and went in there and looked at it. But that was kind of cool living so close to it. I always enjoyed that a lot. You'd see a lot of weird things on the Warner Brothers lot. I remember one day in the roll call, getting ready to go out and start our day, and we would have these. Well, it was like a what do you call it? A briefing every morning with each shift, and I would stand up there as the watch commander and tell them, "Here's what's filming on the lot today. George Lopez is going to be out on New York Street. Friends is going to be over here. Blah blah blah. Whatever you tell them the rundown." Some of my guys knew what was going on, guys and gals. And the weird things that you see at a movie studio is what always killed me, because they told us one day we're gonna have a tank coming through gate 7. And I said, "What do you mean a tank?" "A tank, an army tank." And I'm like, holy shit. So I remember later that afternoon, we were all like, "When's the tank coming in? I want to see this tank." And I forget what they were using it for, if it was an ER episode or something else. But imagine being in the middle of the studio and this huge military tank coming through there. I mean, it's the craziest thing ever. But that's the kind of fun stuff that happens. So I want to talk to you about craft service. The best part of the entertainment industry, in my opinion, is the food, guys. This is a shot on YouTube for you, backstage craft service, kind of what it would look like in the back of the George Lopez set or any other TV show. You can see all the goodies there. And I don't know, these people worry about, like, the actresses worrying about their weight, and the men trying to keep trim, and then they got all this great candy and food and like anything you could think of. It was one of the best things in the world. I mean, top of the line food, yummy, good stuff. I would often go home with craft service stuff like a steak and stuff like that. They would have at lunchtime, and also at dinner, they'd have tents up, like little pop tents, and the cast and crew would sit under there. And of course, nobody ate until the cast of the show or the movie ate, and then you could go eat whatever you wanted. But yeah, man, I'm telling you, craft service the way to go. I remember working on ER on some of these hot summer days, and they were all union, those movie sets, so they had meal period breaks they had to have. But the thing was, dude, you'd have this massive, massive meal for your lunch or your dinner, but then they'd bring in a guy making hoagies and big old rolls filled with everything, bell pepper, onion, anything you could think of. And it was like, ah, and that was supposed to be like a meal period break. So you eat that, and then 2 hours later, the huge craft service meal for dinner or whatever. So you definitely get fat real quick eating some of that craft service stuff. But craft service is definitely cool. They have some cool trucks now that they use for this. If you're watching YouTube, here's a shot of an inside of a craft service truck. I used to go into the one on CSI Miami and make myself sandwiches during the afternoon and stuff like that. And if you haven't noticed yet and you're watching the YouTube channel, that little girl there in the craft service truck, that is Aubrey. Aubrey played Lily on Modern Family. And yeah, there she is. And that picture was taken because she was excited about the new craft service truck for Modern Family. It's good stuff. Movie studios definitely like a Toyland inside for secrets and stuff like that. One of the last things I want to tell you about was the gift shop there. When I first started working there as a watch commander, I would go into the gift shop. I forget what gate it was right next to, but I would go in there and I'd look around at some of the merchandise. Some of the stuff was cool, and I thought, But then I saw these leather jackets, and you've probably been wondering why I have one on. I'm in an air-conditioned room, number one. But this jacket is my story. So I went into this gift shop shortly after I became a watch commander, and I saw this leather jacket hanging up on the wall. And if you're watching YouTube, here's a shot of the back. It says Warner Brothers Studios or WB. And it is a motorcycle jacket, all leather, and it weighs quite a bit. And I have that on right now, but there it is in the picture for you. So that jacket retailed at about 300 and something bucks. And I used to go in there and I used to look up at it, and I thought, man, I want to buy that jacket. That thing is sick. So I would go Google at it all the time, and I really, really, really wanted it. And I thought, well, I'm just going to save up the money and buy it or whatever. But I was talking to one of the managers of the gift shop, and he was like, oh, you're the new watch commander, Chuck. And I said, yeah. And he goes, what are you looking at? And I said, oh, I was looking at that the leather jacket, you know, the Warner Brothers one for 300. I said, that thing's sweet, all real leather, blah, blah, blah. He goes, come by today when you get off and I'll give it to you. And I said, what do you mean, give it to me? He said, no, that's what we do. He goes, it's, you know, it's the movie industry. He said, you work here, so it's free for you. Well, that made my day. I was like, I was very excited, dude. I guarantee you, as soon as I clocked off that day, I ran over to that gift shop and I thought, is he really going to give me this $300 Warner Brothers leather jacket biker thing? And he did. I took that shit home, and as you can see, I still have it today. I want to thank Spotify once again, because I forgot to thank them last week for helping me out with my platforms and stuff. Everybody who's been coming and watching, we got all kinds of new stuff coming, better stuff. It gets better. Yes, it does. And if you read the bottom of the screen, if you're watching YouTube, we've got stuff coming up where I'm going to be discussing Gary Busey, P. Diddy, an old rapper named Master P. I'm going to tell you about my experience with the Wu-Tang Clan. That's right. I got one of those. Mm-hmm. So come on back next week. Thanks for watching, you guys. Thanks for listening. I love you guys. I'm Chuck Oliveris, and we will talk soon.